She came home like it was any other night, grocery bag in one hand, her phone still lit up with unread texts in the other. But there was something different about her energy. Too calm, too neutral, and that's what tipped me off. I was halfway through chopping onions for dinner when she said, "Can we talk for a second?" Her name's Chloe, 33, co-founder of our bakery startup, Bread Cycle. Also my girlfriend of 4 years. We live in a loft above our office in downtown Boise, where flour gets into everything and our oven's older than both of us. "Yeah, sure," I said, wiping my hands on a dish towel. She put the grocery bag on the counter but didn't unpack it. "I've been talking to someone." I paused. "Someone like a business coach," she said, emphasizing the words like they were sacred. "He's trauma-informed, helps people unravel harmful patterns. It's been really eye-opening." I nodded slowly. "Okay, so what's this about?" She took a breath. "Not shaky. Practiced. After a lot of deep work, I've realized I've been operating from a place of fear. Fear that's being reinforced by your energy, your tone, the pressure you put on me." There it was. Not a conversation. A presentation. "Pressure I put on you?" I echoed. Chloe nodded. "The startup. The expectations. Your need for control. It's toxic to my nervous system. I don't feel psychologically safe." I stared at her. "Are you saying I've been abusive?" "I'm saying I've been complicit in a dynamic that doesn't serve me. And I need space to assess whether staying in this relationship, personal and professional, is healthy." She wasn't crying. She wasn't even upset. She was detached. Like she'd already rehearsed this with her coach, and I was just playing my part. "Let me guess," I said. "This is about growth." "Yes," she replied. "And I think it would benefit you to do the same. Maybe work with someone on your own. See where your control comes from. We've both got wounds." This wasn't a breakup. It was a rebranding. I leaned against the counter, watching her carefully. "You're not asking for time. You're carving out power." She blinked, and I saw it, a flicker, a moment of recognition that I'd nailed it. "You're framing this like I'm a threat to your growth," I continued. "So that when you make your next move, take a bigger stake, change the structure, maybe bring someone else in, it already makes sense. Because the story is I was holding you back." "That's not fair," she said quickly. "It's not false either." We stood there in silence. I wanted to yell, to call her out. But instead, I just nodded. "If you need space," I said, "take it. But don't pretend this is some shared healing journey. You're not working through things, you're rearranging the board." She didn't answer, just grabbed her overnight bag, already packed, and walked out. I stood alone in our kitchen, onions still half chopped on the cutting board, trying to figure out when exactly our relationship had turned into a pitch deck. Whatever this was, it wasn't about clarity or healing. It was a strategy, and I'd just seen the first slide. The next morning, she left early. She didn't say goodbye, just a text at 7:12 a.m. "Heading out. Please don't call. Just need space to reset and reflect. I'm at the retreat through Sunday." She called it an incubator for conscious leadership, some ranch-style place outside Missoula where founders went to untangle ego from execution. I Googled it out of curiosity. Photos of sleek A-frame cabins, yoga circles, and whiteboards with phrases like soft power scaling written in dry erase marker. It looked like a Pinterest board exploded into a business school. I stood in the empty kitchen for a minute, still groggy. Her mug sat in the sink, lipstick stains still fresh. She'd been preparing for this. Upstairs, our bedroom looked untouched. Neat. Zipped suitcase gone. Closet door open just enough to show that half her clothes were missing. A week ago, I might have been heartbroken. Now I was just watching. I spent the first hour answering emails in silence. The bakery downstairs hadn't opened yet. Still dark, still quiet. I could hear the compressor kicking on in the walk-in. Flour dust from last night's prep still floated in streaks of sunlight through the kitchen window. But something kept tugging at me. There had been too many meetings lately where she didn't loop me in. Last week, she asked me to skip our call with the packaging vendor because she wanted to try solo leadership mode. Then there were the Slack messages marked private, calendar entries labeled coach session or founder's circle only. I chalked it up to self-improvement. Now, I wasn't so sure. After lunch, I walked down the spiral stairs to the office below. Our desks faced each other. Her side was spotless. Mine, less so, sticky notes everywhere, a half-eaten bag of pita chips, invoices that needed signing. I sat down, tapped her keyboard. We had always shared access. It was part of our agreement when we launched Bread Cycle. Total transparency, no personal passwords on business machines. Everything was stored on a shared cloud drive labeled Bread HQ. I wasn't snooping. I was collaborating. It didn't take long to find it. A folder titled Personal Growth Journals, Chloe, Do Not Delete, in her desktop documents. Inside were 42 Word files, each one dated, named like a therapy diary. May 4th, realization about power. June 10th, feedback is not control. July 2nd, energetic audit. The first couple entries were exactly what you'd expect. Ramblings about burnout, unresolved childhood dynamics, vague bullet points about holding too much masculine polarity in a co-founder role. But the further I scrolled, the more specific it got. And then it turned. She started writing about me. Only I wasn't me in these entries. I was the source of stagnation. She never used my name, just labels, the partner, the masculine energy, the anchor to outdated workflows. There were stories, situations I remembered, but rewritten, distorted. June 23rd, partner blew up at my suggestion to pause the email blast for a reframe. It triggered old wounds of not being heard. I'm realizing how unsafe it is to disagree in our dynamic. That was the day I told her we couldn't afford to delay the promo because it tied to our investor rollout. I didn't blow up. I explained the numbers. She nodded, said she understood. Now, here it was, transformed into a story about emotional danger. Another entry. I feel suffocated by his intensity. He paces when I speak, interrupts constantly. It's like working with someone who doesn't recognize my sovereignty. Sovereignty. This wasn't venting. This was documentation. And not just of feelings, but of a version of me that didn't exist. She was building something with these. A case. I leaned back in the chair, hand over my mouth. The office was still quiet, but everything felt louder. I knew then, this wasn't about her needing time to reset. It was about planting flags. And somewhere in these notes, she was already carving out her exit path, one line at a time. I don't know what I expected when I opened the rest of the folders. Maybe more vague affirmations. Maybe a few awkward journal entries about self-worth and leadership boundaries. But that's not what I found. This wasn't journaling. This was a dossier. There was a new subfolder inside her personal growth journals, tucked neatly at the bottom, labeled Behavioral Tracking, Internal Only. I clicked it open and froze. Each file was named with a date and a title. March 2nd, Budget Overreach / Emotional Undermining. April 17th, Deadline Imposition / Verbal Edge. May 29th, Strategic Withholding of Support. They weren't notes anymore. They were case files. Each one had bullet points, timestamps, occasional direct quotes, things I apparently said in meetings or on Slack. And every single one of them twisted the truth. One entry called me financially coercive because I questioned whether we could afford to add 2 new SKUs to our spring menu without testing them first. Another said I'd shown volatile energy during a team huddle because I asked for more clarity around roles after 2 vendors dropped us in the same week. But the worst ones were the ones that described things we used to agree on. The day I pushed to restructure our supply chain, that was now economic pressure applied under the guise of leadership. The time I flagged that her portion of the Q1 investor deck wasn't clear, demeaning tone, publicly corrected me, undermined psychological safety. One file had a quote pulled from a conversation I remembered almost word for word. I'd said, "We need to tighten our burn rate, or we're going to bleed through June." In her notes, it became, "He threatened that we wouldn't make payroll unless I adjusted my expectations." It felt punitive, manipulative. That's not how it happened. None of it was. She wasn't just painting me as difficult. She was drawing a picture of a dangerous co-founder, a liability, a man whose professionalism and emotional capacity were in question. And it wasn't sloppy. It was precise. Each file was laid out like it was meant to be handed off to someone. Maybe a mediator. Maybe an HR consultant. Maybe a lawyer. I sat there in the dim light of our office, staring at the words on the screen. My heart wasn't racing. Not yet. But I felt cold. This wasn't a crisis of feelings. This was a campaign. She was setting the stage to justify a split. Not just personally, but professionally. She was writing a version of the last 2 years where she was the visionary, and I was the weight. Where every conflict was a pattern. Every correction, a power play. Every disagreement, a microaggression. It wasn't about truth. It was about leverage. She wasn't trying to process a breakup. She was preparing to win one. And sitting there, alone in the office we built together, I finally understood the real reason she left. It wasn't to reset. It was to rewrite. By Friday afternoon, the first message came in. Hey, I just wanted to check in. How are you processing everything? Processing. Not handling. Not feeling. Processing. Like this was some mutual tragedy we were supposed to be unpacking together. I didn't reply. An hour later. I think this space is good for both of us. A chance to reflect and realign. Maybe look into coaching. It's helped me so much already. I could see it so clearly now. This wasn't communication. It was soft reprogramming. Each text was calculated to frame her as the enlightened one and me as the unwell partner still clinging to some outdated version of reality. You're not broken. You're just stuck in patterns. I hope you can see that eventually. I read that one 3 times, jaw clenched. She wasn't reaching out to connect. She was laying narrative bricks, one thoughtful, condescending stone at a time. I spent the rest of the weekend reviewing her case files again, this time through a different lens. She wasn't just rewriting the past. She was laying the groundwork for a storyline she could feed to others. By Sunday, I noticed the shift outside our texts. A mutual friend from the startup accelerator we joined last year messaged me. Hey, heard you and Chloe are hitting a rough patch. Sorry, man. If you ever want to talk, I know stuff can get complicated. I asked, what exactly did you hear? He paused, then typed, just that you guys had some pretty unhealthy patterns and she needed to take a step back for her mental health. That was the moment it all clicked. She wasn't just controlling the breakup. She was controlling the audience. More little clues followed. A team member casually mentioned Chloe had been feeling really invalidated in meetings and was glad she finally stood up for herself. Another friend, someone I'd known longer than her, told me I came off intense sometimes and that it might be helpful to soften my leadership style. It was everywhere. She was running a quiet PR campaign, one curated text at a time. And the part that hit hardest? She was good at it. She didn't call me a monster. She didn't make dramatic accusations. She simply fed people just enough half-truths, just enough polished self-awareness to shift the narrative in her direction. The implication was always the same. She was evolving, and I was emotionally unequipped to keep up. But I didn't react. I didn't beg her to stop. I didn't send long paragraphs defending myself. Instead, I watched. I cataloged. I kept track of what she was saying and who she was saying it to. Because at this point, I wasn't confused anymore. I was awake. And every calm, condescending message she sent wasn't a lifeline. It was a script. And I refused to play my assigned role. The call came Monday morning, just as I was finishing inventory logs. I almost let it go to voicemail when I saw the name. Samantha, Investor Liaison. But then I remembered, Samantha wasn't just our point of contact for Angel Fund updates. She was also Chloe's older sister. I answered. Hey, she said, using that same performative softness I'd heard in Chloe's texts. I know things are complicated right now. I just wanted to check in, human to human. I leaned back in my chair. Sure. What's on your mind? She sighed, like this was hard for her. Like she was walking a tightrope of empathy. I've been talking to Chloe, she said carefully. And I want you to know, this isn't about blame. It's about growth. Creating a safe space where everyone can be heard. There it was. That same vocabulary. The same therapist-approved phrasing, like they'd printed it from a coaching manual. She told me you've been really reactive lately. Defensive. She's trying to take care of her mental health. And, well, some of your communication patterns haven't made that easy. I let that sit in the air a moment. Samantha, I said evenly. Do you want to talk about communication patterns? Or are we pretending this is about healing? Silence. She hesitated, but only briefly. I'm not here to accuse. I just think it might be helpful for you to take a step back and... No, I cut in gently. I think it's time you take a step back and ask yourself something. What exactly have I done that deserves a total rewrite of everything we've built? I'm not asking hypothetically. List something. Right now. I could hear her blink through the phone. I'm not privy to every detail. But you're repeating a script. So let's be clear. I continued. I didn't yell at her. I didn't threaten her. I didn't gaslight, sabotage, or intimidate. What I did do was question a few decisions she made without me. I challenged sloppy rollouts and asked for accountability. That's not abuse. That's running a business. She started to respond, but I wasn't done. Therapy isn't supposed to be a smear campaign. Coaching isn't a hall pass to rewrite reality so you can become the victim in your own hero's journey. More silence. Then, softly, she's just trying to protect herself. From what? I asked. A co-founder who wouldn't let her run over the budget by 12 grand? A boyfriend who worked through 2 Christmases so she wouldn't have to pitch alone? I could feel her squirming on the other end. Not because she had answers, but because she didn't. Look, I said finally, you can support her all you want. That's your right. But if you're going to be involved in our business, you should probably understand both sides before you start echoing therapy buzzwords like they're truth. She didn't argue. She just muttered something about needing to think and hung up. That's when I knew. This wasn't just Chloe talking anymore. She was building a coalition. But now, I had my own version of the story, and I wasn't afraid to tell it. She came back on a Saturday afternoon, unannounced. I heard the front door unlock while I was slicing lemons for a tea glaze. At first, I thought it was the assistant manager. He has a key for early prep shifts. But then I heard the telltale sound of boots she only wore when she wanted to project authority. Heavy, measured, intentional. Chloe stepped into the kitchen like she owned it. Like she hadn't ghosted the place for 10 days. I set the knife down and didn't say anything. She looked around as if expecting something. Panic, maybe. Shame. But all she got was quiet. Hey, she said, her voice warm, rehearsed. I wanted to check in. Thought we could talk. I wiped my hands on a towel and leaned back against the counter. Go ahead. She blinked, thrown by my tone. I wasn't angry. I wasn't groveling. I was just still. She stepped closer, backpack slung over one shoulder, laptop visible in the unzipped front pocket. This space has been good for me. I've done a lot of integration, a lot of reflection. Clearly, I said. She exhaled like she was preparing to accept an award. And I realized I've been holding a lot of pain. I'm not blaming you. I'm recognizing patterns. Energetic misalignments that were stalling both of us. There it was again. The script. I used to think we were on the same page, she went on, but now I see I was co-signing a version of leadership that wasn't safe for me. I need to rebuild from a place of sovereignty. Rebuild what? I asked. She hesitated, just for a second. Us. The brand. All of it. But consciously this time. I nodded slowly. Chloe, I've read your notes. Her face froze. I've read every single journal entry, every behavioral audit. The ones where you said I used deadlines as manipulation. The ones where you labeled budget meetings as coercion. You weren't healing. You were compiling a case. I was documenting my experience, she snapped. No, you were editing our history to make me the villain. She stepped back, her tone suddenly softer. That's not fair. It's accurate. She opened her mouth to push back, but I held up my hand. If you need more time to evaluate who I am or what I bring to this partnership, take it. But don't do it here. Don't stand in the kitchen of the company we built together, in the home we shared, and act like you're the only one with clarity. I'm not trying to fight. I'm not either, I said. I'm drawing a boundary. Something you seem to appreciate when you're the one drawing it. She was quiet. I walked to the stairs and picked up the small overnight bag she'd dropped at the entryway. You asked for space. Take it. But don't drift in here expecting to steer the narrative. Are you kicking me out? She said, blinking rapidly. No, I said. I'm honoring your request for distance. If that's still what you want. I handed her the bag. She took it, slowly, still waiting for the catch. But there wasn't one. I'll let the team know you're stepping back longer. I added. Don't worry. I won't defame you. I'll just keep it factual, like you taught me. Her mouth parted, but she didn't say anything. I opened the door. She stood there a few more seconds, then walked out. This time, I didn't watch her go. I just closed the door behind her. Not with anger. Not with relief. With certainty. She thought I'd still be waiting on the other side. But I wasn't. The first day after she left again was quiet. I woke up without bracing for impact. No high-pitched voice calling from downstairs about a missing invoice. No passive-aggressive, can we align before the team meeting, from the next room. Just silence, and the low hum of the proofing oven warming up downstairs. And for the first time in months, I wasn't walking on eggshells. By Wednesday, something strange happened. Operations got easier. The kitchen crew was looser. Our lead barista, Kendra, actually cracked a joke during prep. The team wasn't just doing their jobs. They were breathing again. People started knocking on my office door to run ideas past me, stuff they used to take to her directly. When I asked why they didn't go to Chloe, they'd just shrug and say, "Figured it was your call anyway." That's when I realized she'd already been distancing me long before the so-called retreat, quietly reassigning loyalties, routing around me. I wasn't imagining it. The team had felt it too. By the end of the week, we'd rolled out 2 long-delayed pricing changes, reworked our supplier contracts, and finalized a new storefront partnership. All the things she'd once said required more internal alignment. Turns out, alignment wasn't the problem. Chaos was. That Friday night, the text started up again. "Are you seriously just pretending I don't exist? I'm trying to build something intentional here. You ghosting me isn't evolved, it's regressive. My coach says your behavior right now is emotionally avoidant and borderline controlling." I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have words, but because I finally understood that silence wasn't cruelty. It was freedom. She wasn't panicking because she missed me. She was panicking because the lever she used to pull, guilt, confusion, performance, wasn't working anymore. Without access to me, she had no audience, no friction to push against. And every time she fired off another manipulative text dressed up as concern, I saw it for what it was, desperation. Not for connection, but for relevance. For control. Saturday, she sent another. "So this is who you are now? This is how you love? With punishment and withdrawal?" I didn't take the bait. Instead, I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, stepped into the kitchen, and spent the afternoon helping the team develop a new seasonal loaf we'd been tinkering with since March. It rose perfectly, like the room finally had enough air. And I realized her absence wasn't a wound. It was a clearing. 2 weeks to the day after she walked out, I met with Calvin Fields, one of our earliest investors and a retired mentor figure I actually trusted. We were sitting on the back patio of a wine bar he liked, sipping iced tea and talking through Q4 projections when I saw her across the parking lot. Chloe, wearing her neutral clothes, tan wrap sweater, black wide legs, hair pulled back like she'd just stepped out of a silent retreat. She wasn't supposed to be back in Boise, let alone here. Her eyes locked on me, and she made a beeline toward our table. "Excuse me," she said to Calvin, flashing a practiced smile. "I need a moment with him. Privately." Calvin looked at me. I gave him the smallest nod. He rose, excused himself politely, and headed inside. I didn't stand up. "This isn't the time." "I've tried being respectful," she said, voice low but intense. "You're ignoring me. You're shutting me out. This is cruel." I sipped my tea and didn't blink. "You asked for space. I gave it to you. I asked for clarity and compassion, not a total erasure." She dropped her bag on the empty seat and leaned in. "I've done the work. I'm coming from a place of integrity. But you're weaponizing distance. You're abandoning me." "No," I said evenly. "I'm declining the invitation to keep playing your game." Her expression cracked. "You're emotionally withholding." I tilted my head. "You've spent the last 2 weeks rebranding our shared past as abuse, circulating narratives to investors and employees, consulting lawyers under the table. And now you're here accusing me of emotional withholding?" "I haven't." "Save it, Chloe. You think I don't know about the legal consults? The draft memo on co-founder separation scenarios you uploaded to the cloud and deleted 6 hours later." Her face flushed. "I was exploring all options." "No," I said calmly. "You were making sure that if I didn't fold, you'd have the receipts to call it mistreatment. You weren't reflecting. You were positioning." She stood there, breathing hard. Her face no longer neutral. Her script cracking. "You want to talk about legal rights?" I added. "We can go there. But if you're going to play that card, do it with your lawyer, not in front of Calvin. Not like this." She looked around, suddenly aware of people glancing from nearby tables. Then, colder now, she said, "You think you're safe because you stayed quiet. But silence doesn't make you innocent. And screaming in public doesn't make you right." She grabbed her bag. "You'll regret not handling this with grace." "No," I said. "I'll regret trusting someone who thought grace meant control." She turned and walked off without another word. Calvin came back out a minute later and sat down. He didn't ask. He just handed me the check. I paid it without a word. Some battles, I realized, aren't worth explaining. Not when the performance is louder than the truth. 3 days after the public blow-up with Calvin, she came back again. Not to the office. Not to the bakery. This time she showed up at the apartment. I opened the door and found her standing there with a tote bag, a half smile, and the kind of stillness that only comes from practiced restraint. "Hey," she said, as if we were just picking up after a long weekend. "Do you have a few minutes?" I didn't move aside. "You said what you needed to say in front of a patio full of strangers. I didn't come to fight." Her tone was softer this time, a little too careful. "I came to talk. Honestly." I raised an eyebrow. "Honestly?" She nodded. No framing. No coaching buzzwords. Just me. I didn't believe her, but I was curious. She walked in slowly, sat down at the small table where we used to eat Sunday morning pastries. She didn't touch anything, just folded her hands and looked at me like she was trying to remember how we used to speak before all this. "I've had some time to reflect," she said, "and I realize now. I contributed to the dysfunction too. It wasn't just you." There it was, mutual accountability. The final chess move. She continued, "I've been in a lot of pain, and I know I projected some of that onto you. I think we both made mistakes, but I'm willing to forgive if you are." I almost laughed. Not out loud, not in cruelty, just quietly, in the back of my mind, because I finally saw the shape of it all, every version of this act she'd cycled through. Cold detachment, victimhood, righteous anger, strategic empathy, and now, benevolent authority. The offer of conditional grace, extended as if she were handing me a second chance at my own redemption. "I appreciate you saying that," I said, measured. "But I'm not interested in a forgiveness exchange." She blinked. "So you're not willing to own your part?" "I've owned plenty. I've sat with my flaws. I've looked at the patterns. But what I won't do is call clarity a mistake just because it makes you uncomfortable." Her mouth tightened. "You're twisting this." "No," I said calmly. "I'm just not buying what you're selling anymore. You're not here to reconnect. You're here to reclaim the narrative. And I'm not auditioning for the role you've written for me." She opened her mouth, then shut it, crossed her arms. "I took your space seriously," I said. "And during that time, I reached my own verdict. I let the silence stretch. You're not the partner I want, in life or in business." Her face fell, but she caught it quickly, tried to fold back into poise. "This doesn't have to be final," she said. "We could." "It is." I stood up, not aggressively, just to show the moment was over. "You asked me to reflect." "I did. You asked for separation. I honored it. Now I'm asking for something. Closure." She didn't move. "If you care about my peace the way you say you do, you'll give me that." For once, she didn't have a comeback. She rose slowly, gathered her tote, and walked to the door. At the threshold, she turned. "I was trying to do the right thing." "I believe that," I said. "I just don't think you know what that looks like." She left without another word. And this time, I locked the door behind her. Not in anger, not in triumph, just for good. It took about 2 weeks for the noise to settle. After that final conversation, if you could even call it that, she didn't come back. Not to the bakery, not to the apartment, not even to retrieve the rest of her things. She had a courier do it. Left a folded checklist on the countertop, signed only with her initials. I packed the boxes myself. It was strangely quiet after that. No texts, no calls, no cryptic social posts aimed sideways. Just silence. The real kind. And in that silence, I got to work. I reached out to vendors she'd alienated with last-minute changes. I set up a call with Aisha, the operations lead she'd frozen out of meetings for months. I walked Calvin through our financials with no theatrics, no scripts, just numbers and plans. Every time I spoke, I didn't have to worry if someone would twist it into a red flag. I didn't have to translate my tone into some coach-safe version of leadership. I just said what I meant, and people responded. The shift was fast. Too fast, honestly. It made me wonder how long people had been tiptoeing, second-guessing, trying to keep both sides happy without knowing they were part of a larger narrative war. Now they were just working, relaxed, productive, energized. The team started staying late again, but not because they were afraid of disappointing someone. They stayed because they cared, because they believed in what we were building. One by one, people opened up. "I didn't know what was going on between you two," one of our junior developers told me. "But I always felt like if I disagreed with her, I'd be labeled unsafe. Like disagreement meant disloyalty." Another said, "She always talked about boundaries, but hers were rules. Yours were respect." I didn't ask for those comments. I didn't prompt them. I didn't gloat. I just listened. And when it came time to reintroduce myself to the outside world, our early investors, our former collaborators. I kept it simple. I didn't campaign. I didn't justify. I just spoke plainly. We had different visions. She's moved on. I'm still here. Most nodded and moved on with me. One evening, weeks later, I sat alone on the back patio with a cup of tea and no phone in sight. The kitchen lights were off. The team had gone home. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt light. Not vindicated. Just free. I thought about how she used to tell me that my presence took up too much space, that I had leadership dominance, that I was unintentionally diminishing. I believed her, back then. I shrank for her. Adjusted. Filtered. Softened. But now I knew better. Being steady isn't the same as being cold. Having standards isn't the same as being rigid. And being yourself, fully, unapologetically, doesn't make you broken. It makes you honest. And honest people don't need scripts.